Hey, this is Caleb from Macinspires, and this is the complete beginner's guide to TinkerCAD Part 1, the beginning. So TinkerCAD is a browser-based tool for CAD, or computer-aided design, and people have been using CAD for over 60 years. But it wasn't until fairly recently that these tools became widely available and accessible and affordable. TinkerCAD is made by Autodesk, which is a company that creates professional software for everything from engineering to architecture to video graphics. So TinkerCAD allows you to do 3D modeling for free without requiring a ton of technical knowledge or fancy hardware. Now in today's video, I won't get into the more advanced or even intermediate features of TinkerCAD. This is just a bare bones basics hello world, so to speak. So without any further ado, let's dive in. Okay, so this is the TinkerCAD interface for creating your 3D designs, etc. So I'm just going to take you on a quick tour of some of the components of this interface. So TinkerCAD assigns you a randomly generated name at the top. So you can actually replace that with your own. So this is Caleb's project. Sure. All right. Once you're done typing that in, you can just hit return or enter. This big area in the middle, this is our 3D viewport. So this is where we do the majority of our work in TinkerCAD. You have some tools on the side for people that maybe don't have like a 3-button mouse or just like the simplicity of using the buttons. I hardly touch those, but some of them are pretty useful. You got your copy, your paste, your duplicate, your trash, your undo, redo, show all, group, which we'll learn about later, and ungroup, and align and mirror, which are a little more advanced tools. You have your import, so you can import STLs or other 3D files into TinkerCAD. You can export with the export button. Send to, I've never even clicked that button, and we're not going to use that today. So the work plane tool, which is a little more of an intermediate one, like mirror and align, and the ruler tool, which I hardly ever use, but it is like a virtual ruler. Okay, so on the right you have your shape selection area, which you can use to pick out the shapes that you want to use for your design. And there are also different categories. So you can get into stuff like connectors or circuit components, stuff like that. Okay, so getting around this 3D workspace is a really important skill to have. I have a 3-button mouse, so I'm going to be right-clicking and dragging inside of the 3D workspace to orbit. So we kind of have a fixed point of view. We're looking at the middle of the grid and we orbit around that point. If you want to change your focal point, you can use the middle mouse click, or shift right click also works to pan. You can pan up and down, left and right. Sometimes it's a good practice to just try to get like the word work plane into view. Okay. So I'm going to actually use a button over here, the home button, which is going to take my view back to kind of top front view. Okay, so let's add a shape. So on the right, we have a bunch of different shapes that we can add to our file. I'm going to start with a box. And you'll notice once you drag it out that a bunch of things pop up. You got all sorts of lines and squares and this shape menu, which you can collapse or unfurl with that button. From here, you can do stuff like change the color of the shape. And there's a bunch of little sliders which you can use to tweak. But one of the most important features here is the ability to change something from a solid to a whole. Now, if something is a solid, it's something that we can 3D print. That is, 3D prints are solid. If it's a whole, that's basically like air. And you can use that in combination with shapes that are solid to change that shape. So you could cut a shape from another shape, and we're going to look at that today. But first, I'm going to set this back to solid, and we're going to talk about some of the things that pop up when you're working over here with a shape. So you have these white squares, which I refer affectionately to as nodes. You can drag those to change the length and width. So if you grab one of the corners, you can change the length and width of a shape. So if you want it to be wider, you can drag it to the side like that, or if you want it to be deeper or longer, you can pull it towards you, and you'll see the numbers changing on the side. Now, those numbers are measured in millimeters. If you just want to change one of the dimensions, like width, you can grab these black squares. All right, so if I grab the back black square, it's going to move it away from me, but if I or closer to me, but it's going to be adjusting the side that corresponds with the black square. So same for the front one and the sides, left, right. All right, this one that's floating up in the middle is the height, which you can use to adjust the height. Sometimes it gets a little weird. Sometimes you might see your view might be like this, and you're like, which one's the height? Just change your view. It's not that big of a deal. So that's why you want to really get comfortable, because TinkerCAD uses like a perspective view. So if you're looking at something from way low, you might be getting certain buttons mixed up. Okay. So another one of the, so that's scaling. So we can scale objects up in different ways, to the sides, with the corners. But we can also scale the whole shape up, but uniformly, or to keep the same shape, just make it all bigger, all the sides. So if you hold Shift on your keyboard and adjust one of these nodes, you'll see that the shape is still kind of this flattened box. I mean, this works for any shape as well. Oh, I just clicked the delete key on my Mac keyboard, which deleted that shape. You could also use the trash can. Okay, so copying and pasting, you can use these tools up here. Copy, paste. I use Command C and Command V. I don't really use copy and paste that much. More of a duplicate kind of guy. It's just one button. You could click that here, and now you have another shape. Important to note that it kind of spawns in the same place as the other shape. So I do have two shapes here. You just can't really see it because they're in the same spot. Sometimes people will just keep hitting duplicate and find out that they have a bunch of shapes when they really just wanted one duplicate. So it's important to kind of keep track of what you're doing. So let's see how many of these I have. Okay, perfect. All right, so whoops, I duplicated one and put it over there, and now I can't find it. Well, and I'm too lazy to look around. I'm just going to hit the undo button. That's going to bring it back to where it was before. Okay, so if you click on one of these corner nodes, you can actually type in the size that you want. So I'm going to make this 10 by 10. Just hit return to enter it, or enter the height. Make it 10 by 10 by 10 cube. Lovely. All right, so let's talk about rotating. We have these curly arrows, or these curved arrows. There's three of them, one for each side, so length, width, height. They have a corresponding axis, which is a little more in depth than I plan to go in this video. But you can use these to spin your shape around. Now, this rotation wheel works in kind of a cool way, and a cool feature. It has some cool features. Some that are a little confusing to newcomers. So I just want to go over those now and get those out of the way. So if you choose to rotate a shape, each of these curved arrows will rotate it in a different way. So this one's rotating it towards me or away from me. This one's kind of left and right. And this one's just going to spin it like a top. Okay. So when you click on one of these for the first time, you may be tempted to just spin it and hope that what you're doing is right. But most of the time, when you're working on like sort of entry-level projects, you click and hold the button, and you want to stay inside of the inner circle. You want to stay in the inner circle, because that's going to lock us to nice intervals like 22.5, 45, 67.5, 90. That's a good one. 180. That's also a good one. Same with negative 90 or 270. All right. So say that I have a shape like this, and I want the small side to be facing me. I can rotate on the inner circle 90 degrees, and that will give it to me nice and easy. But if you chose to use the outer ring, you go degree by degree, and it gets harder to actually hit 90. Also, if you let go somewhere random, 131, now those nice intervals don't really line up the way that they used to. So it's always good to use the inner circle when you can. Okay, so to lift up an object, which is something you'll want to do often in TinkerCAD, say that I want to put this red box on top of this blue box. You can click on the red box or the object that you want to lift, and this cone appears above, the black cone. You can lift up a shape using the black cone. So now we've got something kind of looks like a leg with a shoe. Cool, I like this leg with the shoe. I like these two shapes together. Now, what if I wanted to move them both around like they were one shape? Well, you can make them one shape, actually. So there's 3 ways to select in TinkerCAD. You can use Control-A or Command-A to select all the shapes in your design, which is useful when you just have 2 and you want to combine them. Or you can be a little more picky and click where there are no shapes and hold and drag a selection box just so it touches. It doesn't need to be totally around it, just so it touches the 2 shapes or any number of shapes that you want to select at the same time. Or the pickiest way is to hold the Shift key on your keyboard and click on each individual shape that you would like to select. Now you can see in my Shapes menu it says that I have 2 shapes selected. So I'm going to click on the Group button, and that will merge those 2 shapes. So the Group button is very, very useful. We use it all the time. Now this is treated like one shape, so it's got like a global height. You can make it longer, you can make it wider. Very useful. You move it around as one shape as well. Also, you could just duplicate this shape, and now you have another leg. I didn't plan on doing legs today, but that's just how it came out. All right, so another useful tool or another useful feature of the Group button is that you can actually use holes. So holes you can use to subtract solid material from a shape. So I've got this box-shaped hole, and I'm going to use this, I don't know, to maybe cut some gaps between the toes in these feet. So you just kind of make it skinnier so it makes sense. And good feature to note is that you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard to scoot things around that you have selected. So if I want to put that there, that looks pretty good. So I want to select just this hole. I'm going to hold Shift. I'm going to do the Shift way. I'm going to hold Shift, click on the hole, click on the foot, and then click the Group button. And now it has subtracted that shape from the other one. So you can do this with any sort of shape. By default, you just get a cube and a cylinder that function as holes. But if you want to, you can make any shape a hole. Let's take a sphere, for example, and I'm going to just toggle it to hole. And you could use this to, I don't know, maybe we're making some sort of Lego thing. There. Okay, so now I've grouped these 2 shapes together. And it looks pretty good. It's kind of like a modern art piece. Yeah, you can group any number of objects. Just know if you have too many, that TinkerCAD will start to chug, and you might get a red outline around your shapes, and you might have to wait a few minutes for that to group. So cool. There are some basic features of TinkerCAD, and I hope you'll continue to part 2, where we'll learn some more, some time saving, some efficiency, some really cool stuff that you can do with TinkerCAD. Well, thanks for joining me.